Even after our parents are gone, their voices still echo inside us. Not in our ears, but in our thoughts. In the way we love, in the way we doubt ourselves, in the way we shrink when we should stand tall. You might think you've moved on, but sometimes your body remembers what your mind has tried to forget. Maybe your mother's fear still whispers through you every time you make a choice. Maybe your father's silence still makes you hesitate before you speak your truth. And maybe, even now, after 60, 70 years of living, there's still a part of you that longs for a simple word. I'm proud of you. If that resonates, you're not alone. Across the world, countless people in their later years are discovering that childhood wounds don't fade with time. They transform, they hide, they wait to be seen. In this video, we'll explore how those unseen wounds, what psychologists call parent wounds, quietly shape your entire emotional world. You'll see why healing them is possible even after your parents are gone, and how releasing that old pain might be the most freeing thing you ever do in this lifetime. Because freedom doesn't come from forgetting your past. It comes from finally understanding it. So let's begin with the silent inheritance we all carry, the voices of our parents still living inside us. Even after our parents are gone, their voices still echo inside us. Sometimes it's not their words you remember, it's their tone, that sigh of disappointment, that nervous energy when something went wrong, that silence that said more than anger ever could. We often think parent wounds mean obvious pain, abuse, neglect, rejection. But for most people, they're quieter. They hide inside small moments that seemed normal at the time. A mother who constantly worried, teaching her child that the world is never safe. A father who rarely praised, teaching his son that love, those lessons don't vanish. They settle into the nervous system, shaping how we react even decades later. You might find yourself feeling uneasy when life gets calm because your body only feels safe in tension. Or you might downplay your needs because long ago needing something meant being a burden. This is how trauma healing begins, by realizing that the past isn't gone. It's living quietly through our reactions. Science now shows that emotional memories aren't stored in the mind, but in the body, in the tightening of the chest, the shallow breath, the instinct to withdraw. That's why talk alone can't heal what's somatic. And that's why, even at 60 or 70, your heart can still ache from something that happened before you could speak. I once spoke with a woman named Claire, 71 years old, elegant, gentle, and always busy. She said she hadn't rested in years because she felt guilty every time she sat down. Her mother, she told me, used to say, "Only lazy people rest." So even now, decades after her mother's passing, that voice still whispered whenever she tried to slow down. She wasn't tired because of her age, she was tired from carrying her mother's fear of being unworthy. That's the silent inheritance we all carry. Not money, not property, but emotional patterns passed down unconsciously. And here's the truth, you didn't create them, but you can choose to stop repeating them. That choice is where late life healing begins, when you start recognizing which parts of your pain are truly yours and which were simply handed down. You might think you've forgiven your parents, but your body remembers. And that's not a failure, it's an invitation. Because when you finally listen to those echoes inside you without judgment, without resistance, that's when the real inner child healing begins. So before we talk about how those voices shape our adult lives, let's pause for a moment and ask, whose voice still lives inside? Somewhere deep inside each of us lives a small voice, the inner child, still trying to make sense of love. Every word our parents spoke, every sigh, every moment of approval or withdrawal became part of the script we live by. Psychologists call this the inner child imprint, a set of hidden beliefs we absorb before we can even think for ourselves. For some, that script says, "I'm not enough." For others, "I must please to be loved." Or maybe, "I must stay small to stay safe." These phrases don't live in your mind. They live in your nervous system. guiding your choices long after childhood ends. They become invisible rules shaping how you speak, how you love, how you shrink when someone raises their voice. Many people reach 60 or 70 and still feel the weight of those rules, even if their parents have long passed away. They find themselves hesitating to express joy, worrying they'll upset someone. They say, "I'm sorry" too often, even when no apology is needed. They overgive, overwork, overthink, not because they want to, but because the child within them is still trying to be good enough to earn love that should have been unconditional. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So many of our so-called fate stories, failed relationships, constant guilt, the fear of being seen, are not fate at all. They're unhealed parent wounds replaying themselves through us, generation after generation. I once met a woman named Marianne, 70 years old, who told me something heartbreaking. She said, "Every time I rest, I hear my mother's voice saying, 'Don't just sit there, do something useful.'" Even decades after her mother's death, that command lived inside her, louder than her own body's need for rest. When she finally realized that voice wasn't hers, she wept. Not from anger, but from the relief of finally recognizing the difference between her. That's the moment true trauma healing begins, when you can say, "This voice doesn't belong to me anymore." It's not about blaming, it's about releasing. Because most of our parents didn't mean to wound us. They were simply passing down the same fears their parents gave them. Fear of scarcity, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. When you see that, compassion naturally arises, not to excuse what happened, but to free yourself from carrying it further. And that's the quiet power of late-life healing. Realizing it's never too late to rewrite the script. Because once you recognize those inherited voices, you can finally start speaking your own. And when that happens, something profound shifts inside. You stop being the child who reacts and become the adult who chooses. So as we move forward, let's explore something many people struggle with. How to heal when your parents are no longer here to listen. There's a quiet kind of grief that few people talk about. The ache of realizing that the person you needed to reconcile with is no longer here. Many people tell me, "I wish I could have one more conversation with my mother." Or if my father were still alive, maybe I could finally tell him how I really felt. But here's the truth. Healing is an inner dialogue, not a two-way conversation. You don't need them to be alive to be free. Because the real conversation, the one that brings peace, happens inside of you. When a parent passes, we often think the opportunity to heal dies with them. But in trauma healing, that's rarely true. Your nervous system doesn't know whether the dialogue is physical or symbolic. It only responds to your intention and emotion. That's why writing a letter to a parent who's gone can be so powerful. It reopens the channel between your adult self and the child who still waits to be. Here's how you can begin this gentle practice of inner child healing. Find a quiet moment. Sit somewhere you feel safe. Write to your mother or father as if time is folded, as if they can hear every word. Say what was never said, the love, the anger, the confusion, the truth. Then, when you're ready, read it aloud, and answer back as your parent might have, but from a wiser, more compassionate place. In therapy, this is called symbolic completion. It helps release the parent wounds that remain frozen in your emotional body. Because the mind and body don't separate memory from imagination, they respond to feeling. When you express what was once trapped, your system finally relaxes. You reclaim energy that's been tied to the past for decades. I remember one man, 80 years old, who wrote to his father, a man who'd never once said, "I love you." When he finished the letter, he placed it under a tree and whispered, "I forgive you for not knowing how to love, and I forgive myself for waiting this long to stop needing it." He told me afterward that for the first time in his life, he felt the weight in his chest dissolve. That's what late life healing looks like. Not dramatic, but deeply quiet. It's the slow softening of the heart after a lifetime of bracing. It's realizing you can still choose peace, even without their apology, because healing doesn't erase what happened. It transforms what remains. So as we move into the next part, we'll explore something most people misunderstand. Why forgiveness isn't about excusing the past, it's about setting yourself forgiveness. It's a word that sounds holy, almost sacred, but for many people carrying parent wounds, it has become another burden, because we've been told that to heal, we must forgive. And so we try again and again to force ourselves into peace before we're ready. You hear phrases like, "They did their best," or "Let it go, it's in the past." But deep inside, something resists. Not because you're bitter, but because your heart knows the difference between truth and suppression. Healing isn't pretending you're okay. It's letting the truth breathe. In trauma healing, forgiveness has layers, like steps up a mountain. The first layer is cognitive forgiveness. When your mind says, "I understand why they did it." It's the logic that sees your parents as human, flawed, shaped by their own pain. It's compassionate, but it doesn't yet free you. The second layer is emotional release, when you no longer carry the pain in your body. You might cry for the child who never felt safe or for the love that never. This isn't weakness. It's the body exhaling decades of tension. And then there's the highest layer, energetic freedom. That's when you reclaim your life story. When your parents' choices no longer define the way you love, trust, or see yourself. You stop reacting from the wound and start responding from wisdom. But here's the mistake so many make. They skip the middle. They jump straight to "I forgive" without first feeling what needs to be felt. And that forced kindness only buries the pain deeper until it leaks out in other ways. Anxiety, resentment, loneliness. True inner child healing means letting the anger, grief, and longing rise so they can finally move through you, not live inside you. I once met a man who grew up with a violent father. For years he said, "I forgave him." But every time someone raised their voice, his body still flinched. Only when he admitted, "I'm still afraid of becoming him," did his real healing begin. He realized forgiveness didn't mean excusing his father's behavior. It meant no longer letting that fear control how he loved his own family. That's what late life healing is about. Not rewriting the past, but releasing its grip. You don't need to approve of what happened. You just need to stop letting it steer your future. Because healing isn't about making peace with them. It's about making peace with yourself. And when you reach that place, forgiveness stops being something you do. It becomes something you are. So in our final part, we'll explore what happens next, how to become the parent your younger self always needed, and finally, live free. There's a moment in healing parent wounds when the story quietly shifts. It's no longer about what your parents did or didn't do. It's about what you choose to give yourself now. This is called inner reparenting. The practice of becoming the loving, safe, patient parent you always needed. It's not about reliving childhood, but about freeing the life force that got trapped there. Because inside every adult who suffered trauma is a child who just wanted to be seen, soothed, and believed. At 60, 70, even 80, this process still works. You can still whisper to that child within, "It's okay, I'm here now, you're safe." And those words, said softly, consistently, begin to rewrite the nervous system. They become the new voice inside, one that replaces fear with care. Many people fear that healing means reopening pain. But late life healing isn't about going backward. It's about coming home. It's about learning to give yourself what was missing. Rest without guilt, joy without permission, love without condition. Every time you choose gentleness over judgment, you're reparenting yourself. Every time you take a slow walk in nature, listen to music, paint, laugh, or let yourself cry, you're telling that inner child, "You matter now." There's a story I'll never forget. A man named Thomas, 76, who lost his mother at 12. He spent decades overachieving, trying to prove his worth. One day during a therapy session, he was asked to place his hand on his heart and say, "I'm proud of you." He couldn't. The words caught in his throat because no one had ever said them to him. But when he finally did, tears came, not of sadness, but of release. He said, "I think for the first time, I felt like my own father." That's what inner child healing looks like. Not perfection, but presence. Not erasing the past, but giving your younger self the love they waited a lifetime to feel. And if you're watching this wondering if it's too late, it isn't. Healing has no deadline, because the soul doesn't count years. It counts moments of awareness, compassion, and truth. So maybe tonight, before you sleep, place a hand over your heart. Say gently, "It's okay, I'm here now." That simple act tells your nervous system, the waiting is over. You're never too old to be free. The child inside you is still waiting, not for your parents' love, but for your own.